Alright, so it looks like you're making some progress. The first thing I want to, it's more of a question than pointing something out, but every video that you send, it's a lot darker than what I see when I render. So I don't know if you're doing some sort of color correction on your side, or if you're plugging into a second monitor that has a weird gamma correction to it. But you can kind of see in the background here what I see in your videos, and then this is pretty much I've done almost nothing. I fixed some. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I fixed things with like the skin and other stuff, but as far as the actual lighting, I didn't change, the lighting compared to what you have, so you can kind of see some differences here. So let me kind of go through your new checklist. I know you're still fixing some things from the old one, but with the skin, I removed the bumps from the specular areas. There's really no reason to put those in there unless you're doing some sort of secondary bump compared to your normal map. So I would just take those out. I think they're distorting the surface a little bit. And then your mean free path, the map that you have plugged into there, you would need to clamp it if you want it to work properly. So right now those values aren't accurate to what they should be. So I actually broke the connection on those, and I usually don't have to pump the mean free path distance up this high. But you can see for subsurface I put it to 2, and then single I put it to 4. And we're getting a much softer appearance to the skin. So the only thing I really want, I don't think you have to pump it up as high as I did. But the one thing I want you to kind of watch out for is see how hard these shadows are on your character. One thing we get from subsurface scattering is those shadows feel like they're being absorbed or softened. And that comes from the scattering of the light back out to the skin. So if you look at the lighting, our render I have going here, the details, even around the nose, it feels really soft right now. Once the render's done, it should get a little bit more firm, if you will, on those shadows. But that's one thing with when you're rendering subsurface scattering, it'll feel very soft when you first start, and then with each pass, as it breaks out that noise, those shadows will develop a bit more and more. So while what I have on the right is closer to real skin than what you have, I'm using your maps, right? I'm just breaking a couple connections. So I don't know if you're following a specific tutorial. I think I shared one with you last time, but what you're plugging in feels a bit different to me. So I don't know if you're following a different one. If you want to kick me a link to it, just so I can kind of take a look at it and see what you're doing, and maybe guide you a bit better with some choices. And then turn on fuzz. The fuzz, which I did for the jacket as well, gives you kind of that fuzzy feeling on the glancing angles. So you'll want to do it for the clothing as well. I have a note made of that. But for the skin, you'll want to turn fuzz on. I didn't pump a noise texture into it, but you can. You can put the cone angle up to 10 or 12. The cone angle really is just focusing that fuzz, so if you want more or a bigger angle of it to happen, up that value. If you want a smaller, tighter angle to happen, then you would lower that value. I also feel like the specular on things feels a bit off, but we can kind of save that as a next kind of tier to jump to. The eye, I would suggest you find a texture you can photo source, because right now the texture that you're using feels very cartoony, which is making your eyes feel cartoony. The rest of the setup looks like it should work. I didn't really take the time to dig up a texture to test it out, but it looks like you're using subsurface. You may want to change the outer eye over to a Pixar surface. It might look more realistic using that, but those would be the couple things I was kind of seeing with the actual eyes. You can build up a little piece of geometry that goes around where the lip of the eyelid touches the eye, and you can get that little bit of wetness in there. You can do a search on it, you'll see how people make that geometry, but that would be another thing that can help add to a sense of photorealism around the eyes, and then obviously eyelashes and eyebrows is going to aid in that as well. But you're getting some pretty decent results here once we adjust some of the settings. The hair, you need to have multiple clump nodes to break it up more, and you need to bring the width down. So over here, you can see everything's everything's just inside one clump. But if you look at mine, it feels like there's a little bit more chaos or organized chaos in there, and that comes from the multiple clump nodes, sorry, that I'm using. So let's go over here to your hair sculpt collection, modifiers, and you'll see I have 3 clump nodes on here. So the first one I pretty much left alone. That's the clump node that you have. And then these second and third clump nodes, the main thing that I did that's different is I'm opening up the back end on the second one, and on the third one I keep it nice and tight. So you can see it's all the way tightened. And then what I do to build the maps for these clump nodes is if you go to set up your maps, got too much going on with that render. I'll set the density for the medium. This is set to 5, and you can see all these little yellow sticks or normals that popped up. You want to find a good, these are what the new clumps or the medium clumps are going to be. So if that looks like too much, you could, let's say, set this to 2 and then hit generate, and you can see there's less little values out there, right? And then you hit save and it generates another clumping map, and you can use that for your secondary clumps and then your tertiary clumps. But you can kind of see the result that you're going to get from that. And then I changed the width to 0.02. A lot of times I'll do my final hairs at 0.007, and then you'll just have to increase how many you have. That's another main difference that I did. So if you look at your render, the hairs feel very, very large on them. And then if you look at my hairs, they're nice and thin and soft, so that it's going to definitely feel more realistic with the thinner hairs. And then to break up the hairline and break up the hairstyle, I threw a cut on there on the top. So if we go to the top here, I have a cut, and then I just did it from 0 to 4. So it really helps to kind of thin out some of the hair, and that allows me to up the value that I have to give me a little thicker hairline and not have too thick a hair on the outside. So it kind of simulates broken hairs or broken ends and stuff. So sometimes we'll have some very short hairs, and sometimes we'll have some long hairs. So it helps to kind of vary that up a little bit as well. The mustache, it's a little weird. Like with the mustache, with facial hair, I'll usually do 2 to 4 times the thickness of what my hair on the top of my head is, and I'll do that for beard, mustache, eyebrows, eyelashes. So all that hair I'll leave a little bit thicker. But I think the grooming of your mustache or the curves that you're using is a little bit wonky, so I didn't play with it too long, but I wasn't able to get like a really good result within kind of 5 minutes. So if it were me, I would be playing with the curves more to get a better initial groom on it before I went into adding clumps and cuts and sizing the hairs and everything. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well. With the glasses, I would use the Pixar Surface Shader, and then under the glass/advanced settings, you can put in the index of refraction. So on both the plastic and the lens, I'm using, I switched it over to a Pixar Surface Shader. It's just that I'm more familiar with it, and I know kind of how to make it work. So that would be this one. So if we take a look at these and we look under, there we go, glass, right? And then open up advanced, and this is where your index of refraction is. So the glass on actual glasses is 1.523 from what I could find. So I went ahead and put that in. And then for the plastic, which is, let's see which one, I forget what I named it, regular plastic, just below it. For that one, the other value that you can change under glass is the roughness, and this is how much light is being allowed through. So you can see the glasses over here almost look like, the frames look like frosted glass, which he kind of has a little bit from the reference that I looked at, but I have it too much here. So I would say, you know, looking back at the reference, it might be like a 0.3 or 0.4, just to give it a little bit of, you know, frosted look to it. And then index of refraction on that, I put to 1.5. I think that's based on the plastic I looked up. Plastic. Yeah, so we could go with acrylic, so maybe 1.498. But, you know, based on the plastic it was, you could go ahead and change that up a little bit. Clothing, your clothing was too dry as well, so I don't think I have the specularity of it correct yet, but I did put some specularity on it, and it's helping to sell kind of the realism of that jacket. So if I look at your cloth, everything kind of felt too dry. So adding fuzz and adding a little bit of specularity to it, and then up the kind of glossiness of it. So it's not like a tight specular highlight, you know, but you're gonna want some speck to it. And it might be nice to kind of do some contrasting. So like here, he's got a silk tie. It's got a nice tight specular highlight to it. You have a medium specular highlight to the actual jacket, and then the shirt has a wide open kind of specular highlight. So work with those highlights to get some contrast between the clothing. And even fashion designers will do that, right? So color, contrast, shape, I mean, we think about those things when we're choosing clothing as well. So those are all things to keep in mind to guide you, you know, when you're creating your artwork. Yeah, and then lighting, I just had that question about color correction, you know, and last time what you had was, you know, drastically different from the render I was seeing, and even this time, you know, it was drastically different than the render I was getting, and that's the only reason I bring that up. So hope this helps. I think we're getting closer, you know, to something that's looking pretty good, especially for, you know, someone graduating. I think if we still look at this compared to, you know, where the industry is at on photorealism, we have, you know, ways to kind of go, and there's a learning curve with this stuff. But if you can make the changes I just went over, you know, and get a render, you know, plus the fixes on the eyes, because I didn't do that on this one, but if you can make the additional fixes to the eyes and the coat and the mustache, add the eyelashes, add the eyebrows, add the wetness to the eyes, even with what I have here is going to be pretty good, you know, for you graduating. And then my intent would be is that you could, in coming up months, take what you learned with this one and apply it to all your other models, right? So when we started working this month, you had a lot of models, and the modeling itself was pretty good on it, but how you were presenting it and the final look at things is really where I thought you needed the help. So you've come a long way this month, and I think if you can kind of hit this final bar that I showed you today and then apply that and keep kind of plus one-ing it with the other models, you're going to have a pretty nice, well-rounded portfolio. So let me know if you have any questions, and I hope this is helpful.